Hi, I'm Scott with OrganiLock, and it is now March of 2022, and this video is the long overdue summary of our 2021 commercial corn test. Now, in hindsight, I'm glad for the delay because the events of the past 6 months have put a global focus on food security and the need for rapid regenerative ag solutions. Now, the purpose of this test was to demonstrate that our new organic fertilizer can do several things. Probably the most important, we can economically and rapidly regenerate underperforming soil. We grow healthier plants, we can increase nutrition levels in the food, we can increase yields, leave a residual soil nutrient to roll into the next year, we can increase carbon sequestration rates, and we can accomplish all these things with one application, and it'll all happen within the first season. Well, these are bold claims to be sure, but I'll back them up in the update. Now, alternative and popular solutions like cover cropping, no-till, and various forms of liquid inoculation, well, they can be effective to some degree, but they'll take years to actually show significant results, and generally speaking, they don't carry the nutrient needed for annual row cropping. Bluntly stating the obvious, in my opinion, if these solutions worked, we wouldn't be here. So there's a lot of information to digest in this update, so hang in there as I spend the next 15 minutes or so unpacking what we believe is one of the most important challenges facing the world today. So broadly speaking, we classify our product as a feed and fix solution. You must first feed the soil to fix it. While most regenerative ag solutions are pretty good at adding microbes to the soil, none of the ones that I've found actually provide adequate food, the right type of food for the microbes to last through the season, especially not if it's being combined with enough nutrient for the plants as well, all outside of the synthetic fertilizer solution. We manufacture two configurations of fertilizer. One is solid, one is liquid. The solid fertilizer feeds the soil and the plant at the root level, and the liquid fertilizer feeds the plant through the foliage. Our solid fertilizer product, it's available in two formats. A loose version of product is called potting mix rehab for pots and containers and the like, and the pelletized version is soil rehab, and it's used for in-ground applications. It's a microbe inoculated carbon and organic nitrogen rich fertilizer designed to prime the soil with life and plant nutrients. Our liquid fertilizer is called Foliar Boost Plus, and it's for feeding the plant once it's emerged out of the ground. Now, since this particular test we were trying to focus on soil rehab, Boost Plus wasn't used at all. Well, that said, let's talk about the test. One of our primary goals is to replace synthetically derived nitrates with organic nitrogen. So the first question we addressed is, what resource can provide massive amounts of organic nitrogen and do that at a reasonable cost? Well, we've chosen animal mortality as that resource of organic nitrogen. Worldwide, there's actually an incredible amount of this resource available, simply because it's created every day that we eat, all the scraps left over from that process. And most of it needs a place to go instead of the landfill. It's important to note that these ingredients are not composted. Just like you wouldn't want to eat pre-digested food, we are saying plants don't want to eat it pre-digested either, which would mean composting. We want it fresh. Fresh ingredients contain the maximum amount of nutrients needed to feed the soil and the plant. Well, we combine these with biomass carbon, some biochar, and a small amount of manure. Well, to convert this mixture into a usable product, it must be pasteurized and it needs to be dehydrated. The pasteurizing process is designed to kill all microbes, bacteria, and seeds while still maintaining the food value. Then we add a broad spectrum of dehydrated and beneficial microbes to the pellets. At this point, we have an organic, and it's sterile, and a rich food source for the microbes and the plants that can be stored for a long period of time, even years, without losing significant value in terms of nutrient. Let's take a satellite view of the OrganiLock property. We're going to pick an 8-acre piece of our field here. So we treated 3 acres over on the right-hand side that was historically an underperforming side of the field, and then the other 5 acres we just did commercially the way they've always done it. Well, the soil rehab treated side, the soil rehab was disked in a few days before planting, and the corn was planted at a population rate of 32,000, and around here we hope to get 200 bushels an acre at that rate. The 3 acres were treated, had a underperforming history, which is why our farmer asked us to treat the area. Well, after planting, the entire field, all 8 acres, were farmed using normal practices to our area, which included initial fertilizer inputs, herbicides, pesticides, and a urea application at the V6 growth stage. Well, here's the OrganiLock 5 P's approach to the rapid regenerative ag. Step 1, the first P, prime the soil with microbes and organic fertilizer with a huge emphasis on organic nitrogen and a low C/N ratio. So being very clear what we're trying to accomplish. To fix soil microbes must be present, and they need to be well fed. And that's the piece that's missing in most of the other solutions. They need to be well fed through the entire year. Well, the root of our soil problem is that synthetic nitrates don't feed soil microbes. Organic nitrogen does. So by definition, if a synthetic nitrate is used, we don't feed the microbes. We've been slowly starving them since the invention of the Haber-Bosch process 120 years ago. So this didn't happen overnight. It's been over a century in the making. So as a sidebar, if you want to understand more about the complex relationship between nitrogen and agriculture and even the human race, you should read a book called The Alchemy of Air. I'll leave it at that. Great book, and it'll help you understand a lot of what's going on. So to finish the first P, soil rehab rapidly repopulates and feeds microbes and provides a fertilizer for the plants for the first entire season. Step 2 is planting, and once microbes are reestablished in the soil, planted seeds will germinate and emerge above ground as a growing, productive plant. Step 3 is the power phase. How do you power the process? Well, above ground, plants are powered by the sun through photosynthesis. The roots will develop complicated relationships with bacteria and fungi, nematodes. There will be root exudates, and it'll all happen in the root zone, or what they call the rhizosphere. And this is the part of the process that is the most productive when it comes to soil regeneration and carbon sequestration. And then number 4 is the productive phase, where a healthy bacterium to fungi ratio should form, resulting in a healthy, productive, bug and disease-resistant plant. And then step number 5, it's to keep the main thing, and that is to repeat step 1 so we can do steps 2, 3, and 4 well. So we're going to look at this 5 steps again, but from a different perspective. Now that you understand what they are, and I'll put some practical to it. So step 1 was to prime it. That means we were trying to establish soil life. So how do you know if soil life is present? Well, like many, you could go hire a consultant to look at your soil with a microscope or some other kind of test, and they can tell you what's in it or not, and then they're going to point you to one of the traditional no-till cover crop type things. They may give you a recommendation on some fertilizers to put on there, but again, nothing significant. Then there's things like the Haney test that will measure soil respiration. It's actually measuring if there's life there by what they breathe out. We prefer that when you're checking our soil for that kind of thing. But better yet, why not just, if you use a product like ours, this pelleted version that has all the microbes and the food, you simply put it down on the ground, you disc it in. A couple days later, you're actually looking at what looks like a little spider web. It's called hypha, and that's a direct result of the activity of microbes. So we know that if you are seeing hypha, or the evidence of the microbes on the surface, they are obviously going to be active within the soil, working around the plant roots and in that atmosphere. So step 2, if you plant a seed, we all want it to germinate, right? Well, soil rehab promotes successful germination rates, and that's where we're so good at fixing poor soil, we increase the overall health. If your germination rate goes from whatever it was to almost 100, that's all freebies, because you're not getting those losses or the need to reseed, replant, if it didn't come up. So as you can see, oh, here's an example. If you take a look at this video clip, on the right side, that's the, quote, bad side of the field. It has nearly 100% germination, whereas the other side, you can see, is in need of replanting. Well, that's the commercial, quote, good side of the field, and it had to be replanted. So, again, if you can plant and get better germination, you're off to the races already. So steps 3 and 4, the power and production. If you've got good plants, they've germinated, they've emerged, now we're all about growing a healthy, productive plant. And here in this particular clip, you'll see the difference between plants on either side of the field. So on the side at harvest time, if it's not obvious, the corn ears themselves are about chest high, 4 feet high. And on the side that we treated, they're up at about 6 feet high. The stalks were bigger, the prop roots were huge. They actually had to lift the combine and cut higher just because the ears were that much higher. So it's all about producing a better product, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So let's jump into the test results. That's what we're all here for, right? So after crunching the numbers, both sections of the test field produced at a rate of 210 bushels an acre. Our side, their side. That's about 5% above our best expectations. We were hoping for 200, so that's pretty good. His other fields where he planted corn averaged 190, so that would be an 11% increase over his average of the other fields that he farmed. So there's several things to note here, because it's a bigger picture than that. It doesn't sound all that impressive, I know. Well, we did apply soil rehab at the rate of 1,000 pounds per acre. That's just so everybody knows. The soil rehab treated portion of the field did yield 210 bushels, and it did it without the requiring, or we didn't have to replant. So bad field, good germination, got 210 bushel without any excess work. So according to our farmer, that side of the field last year and years in past would have been in the 125 bushel per acre range. So if you use that number, it's a 68% increase. So again, like I said earlier in the presentation here, we're really good at bringing bad land or poor performing soil up to better performance, if not maximum performance. So here's a picture of some of the roots that I pulled up 6 months afterwards, just a couple days ago. And you'll see the difference in the roots. You've got the commercial one that's obviously smaller. You have ours that's much bigger, hairier roots. You've got, if you look at the prop roots, they're gigantic, farther spread apart, so you have a healthier plant. You have the bigger stalks, and then, as we said, ears were bigger. Everything about the plant was nicer looking. Never a sign of nitrogen deficiency on any of the plants. Well, the other thing we can look at here is, we talked about residual nutrient in the soil. So in this picture, you can see the treated side, the stalks are black or have a dark color to them. On the other side, above my hand in this picture, it's kind of a gold color. Well, that's a direct sign of the extra nitrogen breaking down the stover even while it's standing. Whereas on the other side, there's just not much going on because there wasn't any residue. So you see it in the stalk, you see it in the ears and how high they were, and now you see it in the residue even 6 months later, as far as proof that there's extra nitrogen and other nutrients in the soil. So based on all of that, and the fact that we have residual nutrient in the soil, we will step out on a limb and say that we actually should have gotten over 210 bushel on our side because we had extra nutrient. We were simply limited by the 32,000 population rate. So if that's the case, we probably should have put down 35,000, and maybe we would have gotten 250 bushel. I don't know, but that's one of the tests we'll do this year, is to go ahead and push it up because we had extra nutrient left over. So like I said, we're really good at rebuilding poor soil, but I want to make the note that you won't necessarily get a big boost out of good soil because you're already getting the potential out of that soil. So yeah, we'll get healthy plants, but you won't necessarily see a much larger yield. It's not what's going to happen. Well, there are other benefits as well. We'll just kind of go through a laundry list here. And a big one here is soil rehab unlocks those previous unavailable nutrients in your soil. When you get your analysis report back, at least there used to be, they would tell you what's unavailable. Ask the question why it's unavailable. It's because you didn't have the microbes to break it down. That's their job. Put the microbes in the soil, they'll make all that stuff that's in the soil that you've never been able to get to. Now you're going to have nutrient uptake in your plants. Everything's going to go according to plan. Soil rehab can be applied the same day as planting. We've done it several times. It won't burn your crops. And as soon as soil rehab is applied and it gets wet, microbes wake up and they begin the process of mineralization, which is what I just talked about with unavailable. It's making all those nutrients available for the germinating seeds. Soil rehab can be used as a top dress. Don't recommend it, but if you have to, you can. But the best way to apply is to get it in the ground by disking. So a note there, in your no-till, people are really worried about tilling it up because they're worried about disrupting the microbial activities underground. And we're kind of saying, you know, we don't care because, first off, first year, you're going to have really good soil absorption and everything else because of the microbial stuff. The residues are going to help. And as you'll see here in a minute, there's a lot of self-propagating ground covers. So we can come back in next year and just disrupt the whole process, do it again. And it's going to get better and better. And we're reestablishing life every year. So a little bit of a long explanation, but we don't worry about no-till with this process. The soil rehab is self-regulated. Activity levels are based on temperature and moisture. So in the winter it slows down, comes back up when it gets warm. About the time your plants are looking for it, apply a little bit more, which by the way means, you know, if we're leaving residue, that means I don't need as much year after year. And somewhere we'll probably drop down into 500 pounds a year and everything should be great. We don't know that. That's the testing phase we're in now. Nutrients won't wash away or volatilize because they're organic. They have to be broken down, and as they're being broken down, they're being consumed. So we don't worry about those runoffs into the Gulf and all that. If you use this long enough, in theory, we could clean up the Gulf. Let's see. We talked about the year after year. That's very important to get the residue build up. The weed pressure is reduced because grass and low-profile ground cover loves to grow in this fertile soil almost right away after harvest. It starts coming on. And here's an example with some pictures. We took this picture with a drone in 2019 showing the first time, or showing the spot where we did our first test with the soil rehab down in that corner there. It's green. Now that particular spot, year after year, we use Roundup on it, we till it under, and then when we have to come back and cultivate, that part is always the worst because the grass wants to keep coming back. You can see the rest of the field, typical worn out field, nothing really growing there. There used to be a lot of onions and just weeds in general. So here's another shot in 2022. And in this case, you're going to see that the field is green all over. A little bit greener at the bottom where it's had 4 seasons of applications, a little bit less at the top. But the whole field has self-propagated in grass primarily, and it happened almost immediately after the sweet corn was harvested. We didn't plant it, it just showed up. The term that I hear is quorum sensing, quorum signaling, but what likes to grow in a soil like that will just show up and grow, which tends to mean the weeds go away. So we're not weed-free, but we are certainly a lot less now that we have the healthier soil, all because we took care of feeding it first to fix it. Let's see, what else we want to cover here. Soil rehab is scalable because we're using waste stream products that have not been tapped into as ingredients for regenerative ag. So there's a lot of it available. The waste streams we use are organic, they're abundant, they're available wherever there's human population. So let's see, soil rehab is capable of totally replacing synthetic fertilizers, but that doesn't mean we need to. We'd like to reach the goal of being able to do that, but I'll be the first to say the nitrates, the Haber-Bosch type products, are actually very beneficial if used responsibly and as a boost rather than out of necessity. So, as I said, they don't kill the soil, they just starve it. So if we're feeding the soil with our product, go ahead and use a nitrate after the fact, after the plant emerges, because that's all it is a plant food. It's not a root food. I'm all for using for some synthetics if necessary. And to the farmers who are watching this, my deepest respect to you for fighting so hard on many levels to make a living while feeding the world. Let's acknowledge it took over 100 years to deplete our soil. So we can't expect you to fix it overnight. And I think everyone should agree you shouldn't bear the cost of fixing the soil either. In fact, the way the markets work, you can't be expected to fix it without economic help. At OrganiLock, we're doing our best to offer a viable solution, and we're trying to work with agencies to help pay for regenerative processes. 2022 is going to be a good year for OrganiLock Regenerative Ag Tech. Thank you for those who have followed all the way through this video. If you have any kind of feedback or questions for us, please let us know. But otherwise, we'll see you next time.